Hey, welcome back to the Korg Gadget app instrument tour. Today we're going to be looking at the Dublin, which is a semi-modular monophonic synthesizer. And I'll tell you what that means right after this logo comes across the screen. Let's start off the tour talking about how these sounds are generated. We have here two voltage-controlled oscillators. And then right next to them we have a mixer which will pull in the oscillation sounds or pull it out and then add a bit of noise. So let me show you, this mixer has voltage control oscillator up to 10. So number 1 is all the way up and number 2 is down to 0. So this one's all the way off and then noise is down to 0. So let me show you what that sounds like. You can see that we're working with a sawtooth waveform here. If I turn it into a tri, it's got a much softer sound. And then I also have a pulse and a square, which kind of like goes between the two apparently. Okay, so this waveform is controlling it all, entirely of its own. And then there's let me go back to saw. There's a shape knob right below it. Which I'm not sure what it does. Okay, and then below that we have scale, which is basically the octave. Which is interesting. If you remember to 1 minute ago, we have two voltage controlled oscillators, both with a scale. So if I'm turning up this VCO2 to 10, I have both of them turned on completely right now, and I have this one's VCO1 up to octave of the highest octave is called 4 feet. And they talk about it in scale, but it's basically octave. And then this one down to 16, let's say. Now notice that there are actually two sounds being produced at once. There's a high and a low. See, it's the same tone, but they're just in different octaves. And this is interesting because it's a monophonic synthesizer, which means it can only produce one note at any given time. So that's cool to note. We also have here a voltage controlled filter. So if I turn up, let me turn off the VCO2. If I see? So we put a filter around the sounds that are coming through the mixer. And also on the mixer is noise. It's just noise. That'll come into play a little bit later. So this is really high notes. Let me try. That's what we want. Okay, so we're up to the filter. Okay, and now after that we have the voltage controlled amp, which is going to give us our attack, decay, sustain, and release. So right now it's really sharp. You've seen this before. You know exactly what attack, decay, sustain, release means. And now on the keyboard, this is also on the last one we had, which is Berlin with portamento, which means the slide. Turn the attack down. See how it slides a little bit more? This is talking about how fast the note goes from one sound to the other. Right? And then you have legato on the keyboard. There's one continuous shifting tone versus individual tones that still, because of portamento is on it, took a long time to get to each tone, but I generally leave it off. It's kind of bothersome. And then we have the master control, which is the volume out, the drive, which is going to add some heart, some warmth, some grain to it, and then tone. Open it up and close it That's the last thing the sound will go through before it comes into out through the speaker. Okay, so that's the front. Now in the back we have this really fun patch bay. Now notice there's no cables here going on. This patch bay map right here in the back, the inputs, is one of the best ways to understand the front of it because it actually maps out the front of it. See, we have these two voltage controlled oscillators, and we can control with these inputs the pitch of either VCO2 or both, or the shape of VCO1, okay? And then we're going from the voltage controlled oscillators down this path through the mixer, through the voltage controlled filter, through the amp, and then signal out. Now each of these inputs are things that we can kind of mess with, right? With this patch bay. We have here the tools that will affect these inputs. MG1 and MG2. MG means modulation generator. So these little rectangle units here are creating modulation, and they will take, you can send the signal through these inputs, and the idea is that you would mess with the things here, it would go then through the modulation and then follow this map going through the mixer, filter, amp, and then out, right? So how do we do that is we drag on this out here in the modulation generator and put it on the in to something. Let's change the pitch of VCO2 or 1, both actually. This one changes both. So we know we have VCO1 turned up, VCO2 turned down. So VCO1 should be giving us the sound. And let's look at the sound here. Get rid of this. We have the amount, the waveform, and the frequency of the modulation. And we can also choose if we want it to stick to the beats per minute and the key. So when it sticks to the beats per minute, that means that modulation will restart every time there's a beat. And then when according to the tempo. And the key means every time there's a change in the note that will restart the modulation pattern. Okay, so modulation out to pitch. And I want to turn that up a little bit so we can notice a difference. Actually, let's turn it off first. I'll play you some sounds. Now that's coming, the sound is coming from VCO1, and I'm going to put the modulation out to pitch, and we should have that's that modulation. It's on the BPM. Let's take it off and take off the key. It's going a lot faster now. Let's turn it down a little bit. Please. I don't know how. Oh, here we are. The amount is how much the modulation affects it, the frequency is how fast it's modulating, and the waveform is the shape of the modulation. So that's a triangle. Let me show you a sawtooth. Come on, saw. Much more sharp. And a square. And sustain and something in hold. Was it sustain and hold? That's a variable width square. So each kind of modulation will have a different kind of like length, therefore different frequency, therefore different pitch, because we're putting into the pitch. We can put it into other places. So for example, if I put it into VCO itself heading into the mixer, it will affect its strength generally. Let's turn it back to saw. It's basically turning it on and off with this modulation. Now with the beat. Okay, you get the idea, right? Like we can take this modulation and put it through these different ways. So here there was noise before. Let me turn the noise on. See that? It's kind of weird. Weird, huh? And then you can even turn into the cutoff and vary it a little bit. Come on here. I'm always nervous to grab under the wires, but see the cutoff? Remember the cutoff? This guy? It was doing like the weird kind of like just like the overall filter of, because it is the very voltage controlled filter. So this will vary the cutoff of the filter. Put it on the triangle, much more easy to understand. Make it slower. When the BPM is on, again, with this is, see, when it's off, it's going to be from 1 to 10 or 0 to 10. When it's on, it's going to talk about how fast it is in terms of the note. So right now it's on the 12th of the note, 3/16, quarter note, 16th note, right? Okay. And then the gain here on the end. You can still hear it. Let me turn this noise down. So you can feel that pulse. That's because it's going to attack the gain of the voltage-controlled amplifier. Cool. So what else do we have back here? This is an interesting one. Up here we have actually the modulation generators themselves have input. So I can take one from the modulator 1 and put it into modulator 2, take it out of modulator 2 and put it back into voltage controlled oscillator 1. Now both of these, right, you see how that's working? Both of these modulation generators are affecting this note. And then finally we have, I'll leave these here, but we have an envelope generator. I'll put that on the filter cutoff. And you can choose the amount, but we have attack, sustain, decay, release. Wild, huh? There's so many like weird things you can do with this. Now this is just like, it doesn't sound good at all probably, but let me show you a bunch of these cool presets. Look at this envelope generator is attacking the cutoff, so it gives it that like little pulse. The Dublin is actually a really great bass synthesizer. Let me throw down a few notes here in the timeline. I'm going to put it on 2 measures just so you can see what I'm talking about. It's a really good bass machine. Right? So look at what he's doing. He's throwing these, or look at what they're doing. They're throwing these octaves way up. On this right here, like let me turn it up higher. I really like the Dublin. This patch bay makes it strange. So anyway, that's the Dublin. It's one of my favorite machines just because it is so weird. I mean, weird in the way that you can get weird with it. It itself is not weird. It's very logical and it makes a lot of sense, but it's just fun back here in the patch bay. You can get like the strangest, again, I'm kind of using these kind of terms that don't quite fit it, but I'm just talking about the fun aspect of messing with the patch bay and seeing the crazy things. Again, there I am using that word crazy and weird and silly and strange. But anyway, this is the Dublin. It's on the Korg Gadget, probably my favorite music app on iOS. It's so my favorite, but it's it's kind of pricey, but it's worth it. I really think it's awesome. We're up to what is like video 4 or 5 of the instrument tour of Korg. Stay tuned, and next week we're going to look at another one, or whenever I make another video. Take care, everybody, guys. Make sure to subscribe so you can see the rest of these Korg gadgets.